Hi, everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn and I run the services at MedComms Networking.com. So, information, resources, activities for people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing across the globe. You'll find lots of information at MedComms Networking.com. Also, lots and lots of videos over at NetworkPharma TV. So, have a look if you haven't seen them. I'm having a bit of fun at the moment, as I do from time to time, talking to people from across the world and across the business, and talking to them about their personal stories, their MedComms stories, as it were. And here I'm joined by Michael over in New Zealand. Michael, I won't steal your thunder. Just tell us who you are and where you are, and then we'll talk a bit about your journey.
Thanks, Pete. So I'm Michael Molloy-Bland, and I'm a scientific director working for the Oxford PharmaGenesis Melbourne office.
Excellent. Okay. Melbourne office, but you're based in New Zealand, yeah?
That's
Okay,
right.
we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go back to the beginning. I'm always interested how it starts. So I think I'm right in saying you were over here in Oxford at one stage, weren't you, at the university, and then you went from there. So just tell us how it all started.
Yeah. So even when I was doing my PhD, and I think it's a common story, I was in the lab and I was thinking I don't like lab work, but I really enjoy writing and science and so forth. So the day after I handed in my PhD thesis, me and my now wife got on a plane to the UK. No jobs lined up or anything. I was very, very lucky to land a postdoc position at Oxford University.
Right.
In the first few weeks, in fact. And then about a year into that, I still had those niggling thoughts in my head about, is this actually going to be the thing I want to do for the rest of my life? And then an email popped into my inbox, which was actually from you, Peter, for one of your networking events. Yeah. And I went along. I took along my CV, handed it to 3 agencies. I managed to get invitations for interviews with 3 of them. The first one was Oxford PharmaGenesis, the Oxford office. I went to the interview. I liked the people. It was Chris Winchester who actually met me for the first time with that, and who's now CEO of the company. And yeah, got the job. And I took it with them because I just liked the people there a lot, and worked my way up from being a trainee medical writer through to senior writer, principal, and then as a communications team leader. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting path to kind of get in there. I think not too uncommon though.
Just out of interest, I mean, we're talking what 15 years ago or so, aren't we, when you made that move? Yeah. So I accept the fact it's a little while ago, but can you just remember? I mean, you were doing your postdoc and feeling itchy feet, as it were. Had you got medical writing, medcoms on your radar, or I mean, you got my email. Did that just attract your attention, or were you looking around and seeing medcoms as an area to go for? Can you just remember quite what your awareness was at the time?
I can actually. I know that at the point when I was doing my PhD, I was not really aware of medical communications or medical writing. I think I had more of a concept of maybe getting into kind of maybe journal editing or something like that.
Okay.
But, and I think that's quite true. It's an industry that's very hard to, well, at least back then, it's very hard to know what it is. It's quite elusive until you really start doing it. And so yeah, when I was in Oxford and I saw that email, yeah, that was probably what got me started thinking about medical writing as a career and starting to look into it a bit more. And then I got more information at the event. And but again, you are kind of clueless until you walk in the doors and start seeing it all happen.
Until you take the leap. Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's the case in anything. And again, I accept the fact it's a while ago, so things will change a little bit. But can you remember the process? Were you given a writing test? Can you just sum up the sort of process to get into the business?
Yeah, and obviously I gave them my CV, which was an important part of it. They invited me for, it was 3 writing tests that I did, which was very interesting, as doing them late at night while I was still trying to do my postdoc. And it's very nerve-wracking because you just don't know what the standard is, especially coming from academia.
Right.
And yeah, so and there were 3 very different tests as well. So that's something to think about too, is that each agency tends to send out something a bit different. So if you're doing if you're applying for lots of them, you get writing tests coming your way. Be prepared to have to push your brain in ways that maybe you're not used to. Yeah. So, and I think it was but it was a good learning experience, even that. I think, because you start even then getting a sense of, oh, okay, so these are the sort of things you end up having to do as a medical writer.
Just out of interest, jumping ahead to where you are now, are you now recruiting writers? Do you give out the test and assess the test?
Yeah, we're not recruiting as much at the moment, but when we do the interviews, we send out the writing tests. And funny enough, I'm usually part of the interview where I'm kind of going through it with the writer, which is strange. It's interesting that I'm on that end of it now. Funny enough, that part's quite nerve-wracking as well, because you're doing your job throughout the day, and then suddenly you've got to get yourself familiar again with this writing test that you send out to the.
I was just thinking of, can you give us a bit of a clue as to what sort of writing tests you give out now to the people that are coming into the business?
It's a really good question. There's at least one where there's having to draft an abstract for a manuscript. That's probably the one. That's the one I tend to go through the most. There are broader, more strategic ones. I think we do have writing tests that are suited at different levels. So sometimes if it's just someone who's coming in anew, then it'll be things like the abstract for a manuscript, or maybe more of a newslettery type kind of an article. But if it's someone who's got a bit of experience, then maybe the test, and this is one I've actually administered before, it might be a bit more broad and strategic that they have to do, just because you generally know they've got most of those skills, or you hope they do anyway, under their belt. Yeah.
Okay, so come back to you, and you've gone up the ladder, as it were, in Oxford PharmaGenesis, from starting as a writer. Just give us a sense of, when you first went in as a writer, I get the focus would have been writing, but as you went up that sort of career path, presumably the focus maybe changed to more consultancy, strategic type work, to mentoring the junior writers and so on. Just give us a sense of how the day-to-day work has changed over the years for you.
Yeah, so like you said, initially it's lots of your own projects. I mean, I was very focused on publications, and I have been for a lot of my career, actually. So writing a lot of Congress abstracts, especially narrative and systematic reviews, that was something I really got into quite a lot. And as you kind of move up, I guess the quality of the writing and the instinctive nature for being able to do it increases. But then you kind of transition to that point where you've got other people you're trying to train, and that's a whole different kettle of fish, because then I think probably the toughest part doing that is knowing the difference between something that's actually wrong and that's just kind of your own preference, and kind of reaching that balance and not overdoing it, and kind of letting them have their own style. And yeah, like you say, business development, going to meet clients, that you eventually start to have more of that client-facing role. And unfortunately, I mean, you do start to lose that part, which maybe sometimes got you into the medical writing in the first place, where you got your own individual projects. It's a lot like academia. Most people who run labs have very little to do with doing the lab work, which is probably why they got into it in the first place. But so moving on to the point I am now, where a lot of what I'm doing is it's around reviewing other people's work. It's about having meetings with clients, being kind of client-facing, business development, and also in terms of the delivery, being involved in more strategic projects where you're having to guide, not the kind of the nitty-gritty writing, but the whole kind of view. I think that's the path it's been for me anyway, and I think it's still enjoyable though, which is good. I think even though I don't get to do as much of my own projects now, individual ones, I've kind of substituted that for a real enjoyment and being able to kind of help other people kind of progress with their writing. That's kind of what I've substituted in for the kind of the buzz I got from doing my own projects.
Okay. And without putting words in your mouth, a lot of people with your sort of experience will tell me in MedComms, they're still learning. They still find the sort of the stimulation. They still find that, it tends to be quite varied and days are not the same and so on. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but you're nodding. So are you agreeing with that? Would that sum up the sort of
Yeah.
your view?
Well, what's amazing about it is there's always, doesn't matter how long you're doing it, there's always massive gaps. There's always huge gaps in your knowledge. It's a broad industry, not just in terms of the types of deliverables, but also, you know, you've got that other dimension of those deliverables across lots of different therapy areas.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, with that kind of sort of situation, it's just so much complexity and diversity in what you're going to do that yeah, there will be never be a moment where there isn't something you can get into that is going to be stimulating or a bit different. You do go through periods, of course, where you're kind of focusing on accounts and you do a lot of the same things for a while, but then especially these days, you know, you've got to be adaptable, and then you go to the new thing and you find your feet quickly. Yeah, but huge diversity in what we do. And I think I haven't worked in any other industry, so I'm biased, but I always get the sense that we're in one of the most challenging kind of areas or industries out there, just in terms of what the demands on what you have, how you have to think, and you know, the ways you have to think. So yeah.
Okay. Let's come back to your personal journey, because we've skipped. I suppose we've skipped a bit in terms of, as I understand it. I know, because you've said you're based in New Zealand, working out of Melbourne, but we've been talking about the fact you're based in Oxford, sort of thing. So, just sum up, quickly, how did you get from Oxford to New Zealand? And I think you went through a freelance phase in there somewhere as well. So just tell us a bit more of that story.
That's right. So I moved back to New Zealand from Oxford mainly for family reasons. We'd just had our daughter, and we're missing the kind of interaction with grandparents and so forth. And yeah, came back here in 2014. I worked, it was pretty much mostly for Oxford PharmaGenesis for a few years, just all working for them. So the relationship was still there. I never really left in a lot of ways.
Right. Okay.
Then Stephen Inglis set up the Melbourne office a few years back, and it was just this really nice situation of the company suddenly growing big enough that it kind of re-enveloped me. And so I started working for the office, became an employee again in 2021, and now yeah, gosh, I can't believe it's been that long of being a full employee of PharmaGenesis. It's come full circle. It's quite amazing, really. And you never know, do you? You just don't know how these things are going to work out. And the fact that 16 years later, I'm working in New Zealand now for the same company I did all those time ago in a different office. It's really nice, and I think it probably makes me feel like it certainly made the right choice.
Good.
All those years ago at your careers event. So. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm pleased about that. And tell us, just in the final couple of minutes, just tell us a little bit about the working style and practice, I suppose. So we've said a couple of times, you're working remotely to the office, aren't you? So just give us a sense of how that works these days. I know we've all got teams and whatever type processes, but how do you find that? You've been in an office where you've been part of the crowd, as it were. You're now sitting at home working remotely. Just out of interest, how do you feel about that? Obviously it's working for you, but just give us a sense of how it's working for you, and any views you've got on the pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I like with anyone, I think there's the challenges. There's a risk of kind of feeling a bit isolated if you're working remotely for other teams, and maybe feeling like not like you're connected. But I haven't felt that way. I think a big advantage was the fact that I've been working remotely for UK anyway. So I think I developed a lot of those skills. And so by the time I became an employee for the Melbourne office, I was very used to working remotely, except in this case, it was better because then I suddenly had colleagues in the same time zone.
Same time zone.
Yeah, at least by a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's like, so it's hard to predict how it's going to feel at the beginning, but I think weirdly enough, Microsoft Teams has been really useful, because we've just doing the Teams chat every day. I feel like I'm mostly in the office. I feel very connected with everyone, and I feel like I'm part of the team. And we have our regular calls. And I do go over to the office in Melbourne, 2 or 3 times a year as well. And when I walk in the door, it's not like there's these bunch of strangers. It just feels like kind of a smooth transition, and you just kind of get on with things, which kind of speaks to the fact that it does seem to be working in terms of feeling integrated with the team, which is very gratifying. And didn't have to work out that way, but luckily with the technologies kind of converging with the situation with COVID a few years, it has worked out well.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? So just as a final comment, if you've obviously, was it 16 years you said working for PharmaGenesis? That's obviously worked very well. You've gone up to the ranks and so on. But if you were talking to somebody, maybe just a younger medical writer or something, just give us a couple of tips from your sort of wise position as someone who's been around for a few years. Have you got a few tips you could share with a medical writer that's coming up through the ranks? Obviously, your enthusiasm is coming across, so you're quite positive about it all. But what would you be saying to a younger medical writer in terms of encouraging them to keep going?
From the perspective of someone who's trying to get into the industry, it's really hard to know whether you're suited for this kind of role, because it is so elusive. You don't really know what it is until you start doing it. So with that in mind, if you feel like it's a career that you might be interested in and you enjoy writing and you think you could be good at it, well, put your CV in, give it a go. You'll get more insight when you do a writing test. That'll give you an extra sense of whether or not you're really into this, and also whether or not you're good at it, because it is hard to know whether your writing abilities are, good or not. We don't tend to get much benchmarking, especially in academia, for that sort of thing. So I'd say just give it a go, and then see what happens. And then if you're in the industry, I think probably the biggest kind of bit of wisdom, if you can call me wise, would be just take the time, because it's a very busy industry, and sometimes you've got a lot of demands on your time, lots of different things coming at you in different forms. The ability to kind of pause, take a deep breath, stop and just think what your next move is can save you all manner of trouble. And it's taken me a long time to learn that skill. I think I was, prone to running around a bit like a headless chicken, right. If things got stressful. But if you can learn that part, just staying calm, and also professional as well, staying calm and professional under pressure, no matter what's thrown at you, you'll always have a better outcome if that is what you do. Yeah. Okay, so those
makes a lot of sense.
Tips, yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, look, we've run out of time, so thank you very much. I love hearing these stories, and I'm glad it's all worked out. Well, I feel a little bit sort of what's the right word? I'm just delighted that you started with one of my meetings, 15, 16 years ago, and it's still going well for you. So that makes me feel good. So thank you very much for letting me know.
Well, thank you.
And so, okay, so over there in New Zealand, obviously, have a good day. Thank you very much for joining in with us and sharing your story. I hope I can speak for you and say anybody who's watching this can reach out to you via LinkedIn is an easy way of doing it. If they've got any questions, it's just nice to encourage people to make connections. So thanks very much for that. I'm going to say goodbye, little wave. We'll say goodbye to everybody and take care, Michael. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.